welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Jacob Dyer. I'm one of the international student advisors here at the ISSO. I'm here today with my colleague, Michelle, who can say a quick hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Desigan. So happy to see you guys today and looking forward to talking about OPT with you.
There you go. So Michelle and I are both part of the student advising team at the ISSO, and we're so happy to speak with you today about optional practical training, better known as OPT. At the end of our time today, we hope you feel comfortable with OPT and hope you'll leave the presentation feeling confident and empowered and ready when the time comes to submit your OPT application. We want to help you navigate all of the immigration regulations, which can seem so overwhelming for you at times, and know that we are here to answer your immigration-related questions as best we can. Please note that the information that we have today in this session is only for those in F-1 status who are considering the option to work in the U.S. after graduation. So if you are a U.S. permanent resident or on a J visa or something like that, this is not the pertinent information for you here. There's a lot of useful information at your fingertips. All the information covered today is explained in a lot of detail on the webpage. Today's session is being recorded, and we also have a previous webinar also available to you online currently. There's also going to be another one of these webinars later on this month. So we can get started. Here we go. So does this sound like you, right? It's your final term, you're a little bit stressed, you're working on final projects and the hardest courses that you'll ever take in your program. You want to work in the US after graduation. You've heard of OPT, but you don't really know what it is. So moving on from there, here we have a question for all of you who are here. Just checking for a moment to see. Looks like we have 275 of you right now, which is great. And the question here in the poll, everyone is already answering it, but are you in your final semester? Have you applied for OPT before? And what is your degree level that you'll be applying for OPT? In your final term, have you applied before? Maybe with another school at a different degree level? And what is your degree level now that you'll be applying for OPT? While that is getting done, we also wanted to just say that since we have so much information that we're covering in this hour, we really do appreciate your full attention toward the presentation, but we won't be taking questions during the presentation. So as you think of questions, we ask that you make a mental note or put it in the Q&A. And we will be taking a section of time at the end of the presentation to address some of your questions. Okay, looks like we are done with the poll. It appears we do not have any more answers coming in, and it looks like it is a fairly standard spread of answers here. We have something like 3/4 of you are in your final semester is when you are trying to figure out about OPT. About 1/4 of you getting a jump on things, learning about it early, which is great. Have you applied before? The lion's share here has not only 10% has applied before, 90% have not. And what degree level are you at? And we have, again, what we expect. Most of you in master's programs, just a handful in bachelor's, 3%, and PhDs, just a small handful of doctoral students. So it's always good to know kind of what the spread is here. We thank you very much for the answer there. Now, moving on from there, let's look at the definition of OPT. So OPT is optional practical training work authorization, right? It allows you to remain in the US in F-1 status after you complete your academic program with permission to work in your field of study for 12 months. While you're studying as an active student, the activity that you're doing in the US is studying, working on classes with professors. The time that you're on OPT, the activity that you are doing is working. That defines your status. As a student, all F-1 students need to be in the US for 2 consecutive semesters in order to apply for OPT after that. So after 2 semesters, then if you're completing a degree after those 2 semesters, then you can apply for OPT. OPT application is done in 2 steps. Important to remember. The first step is coming to the ISSO for what's called an OPT recommendation I-20. You'll be applying early for OPT before you've actually graduated, right? The United States government, who you're applying for work authorization to, doesn't have access to your academic records, and nor should they, right? They trust us to let them know that you're going to be finishing your degree properly. And a verification of that is actually part of the OPT application process. You apply to us again, first step, ISSO for your OPT recommendation I-20, and then taking that document that verifies that you are going to be completing the degree. Then you go to USCIS for the formal application to the government for the EAD card. EAD, we use a lot of acronyms around here. You'll definitely be getting used to that. EAD, Employment Authorization Document. It is a card. You can see the picture of it on this slide here. Literally the size and dimensions of a credit card, a license, whatever would fit in your wallet. It is your key to legal employment in the United States. So we're going to take you on a short journey here as an explanation of the process. We would like you to meet John. John works at USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and receives tons of optional practical training applications every day. USCIS receives 26,000 pieces of mail every day. I always like to say to people, you know, you're on the F-1 visa. There's another visa type for every letter of the alphabet, A through Z, and subtypes. I think there are 4 or 5 subtypes just of the F that I can think of. Anyway, everyone's applying for work authorization. 26,000 of pieces of mail every day. He's a government worker with no connection to the ISSO. And he gave up caffeine this week. He's not drinking coffee, so he has a little bit of a headache. Today, he'll be processing your OPT application. Here's your little application all by itself. Oh, wait, no, it's not by itself. It is one of many, many applications. Roughly 8 million various applications, like I said, for all of these various visa types and different situations that people are in. 8 million various applications per year. They are processed in the order that they are received. Okay, you are allowed to apply for OPT early. It takes an average of 90 days, and that's why you are allowed to apply 90 days early. So it's time to empower yourself and think about what you can do to make this application process for your OPT as painless as possible. So let's think about what we cannot control about the situation, right? The first thing we cannot control is how long the process takes, how long the application will take to be adjudicated, to be judged. The second one we cannot really control is the job market, what may be available out there for us for work in our field, and we cannot change the rules about how the application works and how the work authorization is how it works and how the rules are set up around it. So we can talk now about the things you can control, right? You can apply early. You can choose your start date. And you can use our ISSO website. First things first, applying early. Like I said, you're allowed to apply 90 days early. What does early mean? Early means up to 90 days early. In the case of this particular semester, we did see that most of you are actually finishing the semester, so we can get into some of the actual specifics. You're allowed to apply up to 90 days ahead of the end of your program. If you are graduating at the end of this current term, the end of your program is the 20th of December. 20 December 2024 is your last day of your I-20, which is the important kind of date where you're making these measurements off of. 90 days, exactly 90 days before the 20th of December is actually this coming Saturday, the 21st of September. So you're allowed to apply up to 90 days before. We're going to begin process. We don't work on Saturdays, so you can put in your application as early as this coming Saturday, and we will save it and begin processing the applications on Monday, the 23rd of September. Now, you are also allowed to apply up to 60 days after the end date on your I-20. So the end date on the I-20, again, 20 December, exactly 60 days after that is 18 February 2025. You really don't want to wait and be applying during the 60-day period afterward. Technically, you can, and this does happen sometimes, but please, if you're planning on doing OPT after this current term, please apply as early as you can. So, your choice. This is the main and most important decision that you're making when you're applying for OPT, is choosing this start date. You have to choose it. It's what we enter into this recommendation I-20, the OPT recommendation I-20. You decide what date you want us to enter into the system, into the database. We do that, and we send that to you, the digital copy with that date on it, and that's what is used to give you your EAD. So again, your choice, your consequences. Let's talk about consequences, pros and cons here. You have your early application. What happens if you apply early? You have the ability to address any application problems if there was something left out, if you uploaded some document incorrectly, whatever it may be. You will have time then to address that, fix that before the end of your program comes. If you apply early, you're able to start your employment with your EAD in hand, to start your work, your OPT work, with your employment document in hand. And also your mailing address will be more reliable, right? By definition, when you're finishing your degree, you may also be moving. This can be a bit of a complicating factor. If you apply early, you are still living where you're living, and you can get the document in hand and then move on from there. Late application, if you should happen to apply late, let's say you apply into the month of February, in the case of this current term, there's a possibility that you lose part of your 12-month OPT, that they just simply approve the work authorization for a couple of weeks or a month later than you could potentially have started, but it will still end at the same time. It's maybe too late to submit if there's a problem. If you put in an application and there's only 1 week left of the application time, and then the time goes up and you can't apply again. Also, you will have less control over when your OPT will begin if you have a late application. If you apply early, you will definitely be better able to focus on your academics, on all this important work that you're doing in your final term of your program. You will definitely have less anxiety over your application. more time for your job search. And again, having the EAD card is always nice to have, and so important, this last piece, which is the communication with prospective employers, being able to tell an employer, not I'm waiting and I think I might have my EAD card sometime in the future, but to have the card in hand and say, I will be able to begin work on 18th of February, I will be able to start work on February 1st, whatever day you choose. Being able to give that strong communication and that short communication to a prospective employer is super important. Again, late application. You may miss job opportunities waiting for the EAD. That happens sometimes. You may feel like you have to work with too many things, juggle too many things at once. And you can risk delaying the application if you have to move. That's another thing that can certainly happen. Okay, a couple of more pros and cons here for early application. You don't have to worry about application status if it's just settled. When you're traveling, you can travel without stress with your EAD, and you can be prepared with the necessary travel documents. Late application. Again, you may need someone else to check the US mail if you've moved. You may have issues returning to the US if there's an issue with your application while you're outside the US. Travel will take more coordination. There's a possibility of having trouble renewing your visa if your work authorization has not been approved when you're going in to renew the visa. And if your application is denied, you could be denied entry into the US in F-1 status. Something you definitely want to avoid. Oh, this is a big question. Do you need a job offer to apply for post-OPT? And the answer is no, you do not need a job offer. When you're applying for OPT, you are applying for the ability to accept paid work in the US. You absolutely do not need a job offer in order to apply for your first year of OPT. Starts to change with STEM OPT, but that's how that works. When we go back one slide, I just want to double check here, right? Even if you have the tip on the bottom, even if you have a job offer, this does not speed the process up at all. Just to remember that for yourself. That is not a reason for them to go faster on your application if you apply late. This is, it doesn't speed the process up at all. So moving ahead. So the moral of the story is really, really straightforward. Do not procrastinate. Don't wait. Put in the application if you're applying for OPT for the end of this term. Get it in on Saturday, this coming Saturday. We are waiting for a big rush of applications for OPT, and we're ready to take them on. Apply as soon as you are eligible. There are sometimes detailed questions about specifically doctoral candidates. I saw that we had a couple of them in the of you who are on the webinar right now. Certainly, you may want to have individual meetings with one of us to talk about your specific situation. Again, apply as soon as you're eligible. The academic workload only gets more difficult as time goes on. Okay, so here we have my section recap. There are so many benefits to applying early. There is no reason to wait for the application. Apply as early as you can. The later you apply, the higher the risk of potential problems. You could miss out on various things. And that you do not need a job offer to apply for OPT. So that is the end of my section for right now. I would like to pass this on to my colleague, Michelle Desikan, to take the next section of this webinar. There you go.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacob. So we learned a lot of great information so far. We know applying early is key. And now the next important thing to consider is choosing that start date. This is the million-dollar question. What is that ideal start date? So let's see if we can figure that out in the next few slides. So it all begins with this OPT start date that you choose, right? We know it can be difficult trying to decide what that is, but it's going to be your choice. Whatever you do choose, you want to stick with it. You cannot submit an application without a start date to USCIS. If you're not sure, you may also want to consult with your advisors, career counselors, as they know the field and industry that you're in to better advise you in this area. So you have to choose a start date that is within the 60 days following your program end date. So we've been using the example so far for those who are finishing this December, that December 20th, 2024 would be the program end date for anyone finishing this fall. So if we keep that example in mind, as the end date is December 20th, 2024, the earliest date that you can choose a start date for OPT would be the next day, December 21st, all the way up to the latest possible date, which could be February 18, 2025. So again, these are the 60 days in which you can choose a date for the OPT to begin. Now, can you change your start date after you submit your application to USCIS? This is a very common question that we get. And the answer is no. Once you choose that date, you need to be very committed to it. So this is why you need to choose your dates wisely, think ahead, strategize, because everyone's case is going to be different, and then decide on that date. So we know that it's not easy, but we're here to help you along the way. Now, some factors you may want to consider when choosing your date. You want to think about, do you have a job offer? Some of you already know I have a job that's going to start on X date, right? It's set in stone. So that's going to make it easier for you to decide what your OPT start date will be. Maybe some of you are not sure yet. You're still looking. That's okay. So that you can think ahead about maybe choosing something later. You want to think about travel. This comes up a lot. Do you plan to travel in between? You've worked hard, you've finished your program, maybe you're going to take a break for some time and then decide to start working, or maybe not. And then you want to think about unemployment time. We'll talk about this more later, but that's also very important because there's a certain amount of days. It's actually 90 days that you can't have more than 90 days of unemployment time during your OPT. And we'll address that in the next few slides. But let's take a look at a case study here. We have two students, one who is a spring graduate, one's a fall graduate, and we have a little video I'd like to show you of how they look at choosing their start date. So let's take a look now and see.
Hello! Thanks for joining us today at Ask the Alums. As an international student at Columbia, I know I'm not alone in feeling very stressed about applying for post-completion OPT, especially choosing the start date. I know I can choose a start date from any of the 60 days after my I-20 program end date, but it's so hard to know what's the right one to pick. If you have a job offer, it's easy. Your requested start date would be the day your employment begins. But for the rest of us, it's not so simple. It can take an average of 3 months for USCIS to process OPT applications, so we can't really wait until the last minute to make a decision. I've asked 2 alums who are now employed on OPT to give us some guidance. Tell us how you chose your OPT start date.
Sure, so I was a May graduate, so I had to choose a start date between the middle of May and the middle of July. I didn't have an offer at the time of applying for OPT, and I was still looking for a job. I knew I didn't want to choose an early start date right after graduation because I was worried that the 90-day clock for unemployment would begin before I started work.
What do you mean by the 90-day clock?
Well, OPT regulations allow you to accrue a total of 90 days without employment.
throughout the entire period of your authorized OPT time. Days of unemployment start counting from the start date on your EAD card.
Exactly right. So my first thought was to choose the latest possible start date in July to be on the safe side and to maximize the time I might need to find a job.
Huh, that sounds like a good plan.
I thought so too. I thought I could change my OPT start date if I found a job that started earlier, but when I checked with the ISSO, I learned that you can't change your OPT dates while your application is being processed.
Bummer, that really locks you in.
Yeah, not only that, I had to travel abroad in late June. Now, obviously you can't start a job and then immediately ask for time off, and I didn't want my time abroad to use up part of the 90 days of unemployment. Luckily, my F-1 visa was still unexpired, so I didn't need to go to an embassy or consulate to apply for a new one while I was abroad.
So what day did you end up choosing?
I finally chose the latest start date in July because of my travel plans and to allow more time for my job hunt.
Awesome! How about you? How did you choose your start date?
Of course, a lot of same factors apply to anyone applying for OPT, but my situation was a bit different because I finished my program at the end of the fall term, not in May. The program end date for December graduates is the last day of the fall term, not the date in February when they get their degrees. So my 60-day window for choosing an OPT start date began right before the winter holidays. Completing a program in December is a bit challenging because not many employers are going to hire anyone to start during the holidays. If I chose a very early start date, I probably start using up some of the 90 days of unemployment, so I didn't want to do that. Since it can take an average of 3 months or more for USCIS to process OPT applications, and there's no way to speed up a pending application, I knew it was important to apply for OPT as early as possible.
So how early can we apply for OPT?
Oh, I know. The earliest you can apply is 90 days before your program end date.
Exactly. So I began my application in September even though I didn't have a firm offer of employment yet.
So how did you make your choice?
I was afraid that if I chose a late start date, I might miss out of an opportunity. If an employer wanted someone to begin earlier, I decided to choose a date somewhere in the middle of the 60 days. Before you start working, weekend days count toward the 90 days limit without employment. So I chose a Monday as my OPT start date, and I recommend you do the same. I'm happy to report it all worked out.
Fantastic! Thank you both for sharing your experience. To summarize for our viewers, when you're choosing a post-completion OPT start date, you need to consider these factors: the time you need to find a job and the time it takes to get the EAD card in the mail, that you can't change your OPT dates nor can you expedite the processing time, the 90-day limit for unemployment, and any international travel plans. And remember, visit issa.columbia.edu for detailed information on the OPT application process. Thanks again, everyone!
All right. So we hope you found this video helpful. As you can see, everyone will have a different start date and everyone's case is very different. So you'll need to take some time to think for yourself what this means for you, right? So just to recap here, the start date is where you begin. So choose your date wisely, whatever that means for you. Consider all the factors that we kind of discussed right here, and see how that will affect your decisions, right? Depending on your travel plans, when your job's going to start, or anything else that may come up. And just remember, you got to stick to those dates. Once you submit it to USCIS, those dates cannot be changed. So please choose your dates wisely. All right. So we are going to move on to our next tip is the ISSO website. So we have put a lot of time and effort into building this webpage. We had you in mind as we developed this. So we really ask that you please trust it and use it as your go-to resource, okay, for any questions you may have. So let's meet Lisa here, a student. She's in your history class. She is an F-1 student from Canada, and she just told you that, you know, you don't need a valid F-1 visa when you travel during OPT as long as you have your EAD card. So now the question would be, do you trust her? Right? This is your friend, your colleague in your class, whatever. But unfortunately, the answer is no, because everyone has their own specific case, right? Depending on where they're from and what the rules are there. So the best thing for you to do is to go to the ISSO website to get the right answer. So just keep that in mind. You're going to hear a lot of things from your friends, from peers, but in the end, if there's any doubt, go to the ISSO webpage. It's reliable, it's up to date, it's there for you 24/7 all the time, and it's mobile friendly. So this is your greatest resource. We have had worked with user experience designers and content strategists to give you the best possible website. So really, I know it's a lot of information that we're giving you now, but you can always go there at your own leisure and look through all the details and the steps of the application process, about any other topic as well. So why don't we right now go on a little tour and learn more about the ISSO webpage if you haven't seen some of these things already. One thing I'll just point out, they're going to talk about a page called Travel During OPT. This is probably one of the most common pages I think students go to. A lot of people have questions about travel, so please pay close attention where that is located in our video.
Hello and welcome to the ISSO website. The purpose of this short video is to go on a brief tour of the website specific to post-completion OPT. We'd like to show you how easy it is to use and highlight some important topics. To begin, we will scroll over the header Employment, and under For Students, we will click on F-1 OPT after your program. As with all our web pages, you will see details relevant to each page and topic. As we continue to scroll down, we'll see quick links indicating what is covered on the page, such as eligibility, important information to know before you apply, and an application process overview. As long as you carefully follow our ISSO instructions, there should be no issues with your OPT application. Here, you can see our OPT calculator, which you can use to figure out the range of dates you can choose from for your start and end date of OPT. We would now like to highlight another important topic, travel during OPT. Information on this topic can be found by hovering over our Visas and Travel tab. Under For Students, we'll select Travel during F-1 OPT. It is important to know if you are traveling and plan to return before the program end date on your I-20, since your re-entry will be based on your return as a continuing student. In this scenario, your OPT application has no impact on travel regardless of whether it's pending or approved, since you're currently enrolled and will return to the US before the end of the semester. With the pending OPT application after your I-20 program end date is passed, we recommend that you remain in the US until your OPT application is approved. This is because if you're abroad and your OPT application is rejected or denied, you will no longer be eligible to enter F-1 status to apply again for post-completion OPT. That being said, there are certain circumstances where an F-1 student may want or need to travel with the pending OPT application after their I-20 program ended. If this is your situation, please see the documents here. These are the documents that we recommend you have with you when you request entry back into the US. We also recommend flying to JFK or Newark, as we have interacted with those CBP, Customs and Border Protection officers. Finally, with an approved OPT application and your EAD in hand, traveling as an F-1 student is far less complicated. Below, you will be able to see the documents that you require as you are still in F-1 status while in OPT after graduation. Thank you!
Great. So hope this video was also helpful, just to kind of show you specific places to go for certain information about OPT and travel. We also want to make sure that you know how to contact us, okay? So you all have probably already have maybe emailed us with questions to ISSO@columbia.edu. You can always call us. We also have virtual appointments and in-person appointments. A lot of the advisors are working with different students throughout the week, setting up virtual appointments with them. So we are here for you. If you feel you need to do that, feel free to make an appointment through our webpage, and we'll be happy to go over your particular questions and your case. So just to recap again, this section, the main thing we want you to know is to trust ISSO. Your friends are great, but they don't always have the right answer, maybe on immigration related matters, right? And, you know, use our website. We made this with you in mind. We know it's a lot of information to always kind of remember. And so you don't have to. You can go there, you can look at different topics. There's a lot of short, great videos on different topics as well that you will find helpful. So everything we've talked about today, you can also find on our webpage. So a couple of reminders we have for you. Now, we've started, there's a new Canvas course specifically for OPT. This is to help you understand the OPT process. So remember that you need to complete it, and then you'll get a certificate at the end. And that certificate of completion you will upload with your application when you apply for OPT to the ISSO office. So make sure you do that. In terms of the online application, USCIS now has been accepting online applications, which is great. It makes it easier for everyone involved. So we highly recommend you submit everything online. There is a fee to ISSO, and there's also a fee to USCIS that you'd pay, and that is now about $470 to USCIS. One thing to keep in mind is that, you know, we talked about the OPT processing time can take a few months. And so if you just apply, that's what we say, to apply early, and you wait, it may take 2 or 3 months, but the sooner you apply, the better. Now, for any reason you think, oh, I really need to know sooner than that, you can't wait. There is an option to apply for something called premium processing, in which they will adjudicate your case within 30 days. There is a fee for this, though. It is $1,685 at this time. So you may want to think about that if this, you know, is something that you want to do. But it can be done at any point in the application process. So you can assess and see how things are moving. And then if you feel you really need to speed that up very quickly and you would like to pay this fee, you can do so. So it's just good to know your options. So moving on, some other things to keep in mind. It's very important to note that when you submit your application to USCIS, you must be physically present in the United States. This is very important. So make sure that you are here at the time that you submit, okay? When you submit to the government, you must be in the United States for that. In terms of unemployment time, we heard about the 90 days of unemployment time. So it's important to note that you cannot have more than 90 days of unemployment time from the start date on your card, okay? So you may choose whatever date. We talked about the 60 days after your program end date. And let's say the latest date, as we gave an example here, was February 18th. If you choose that as your start date, the job that you actually have could start later, right? It could start maybe in March or April. But remember, the time for unemployment days is counting from the start date on the card. So that's very key. So keep that in mind. You cannot have more than 90 days of unemployment time during the total 12 months of your OPT time. And if there are any changes while you are under OPT, you would report that to our office, and everything can be done online. It should be done within 10 days. Another important point is any sort of on-campus work. Okay, so keep in mind, if you are a student now, you're working, I don't know, maybe at the libraries or computer labs or something, any sort of student employment, on-campus employment must end when your program end date is here. So you can work, for example, up to December 20th on campus. After that, if you are hired by Columbia to work, which you could work at Columbia after you've finished your program, you need to keep in mind you can only work once you've received that EAD card. So you must be on an approved OPT time. And then you can work at Columbia again in a job that's commensurate to your degree level, right? You couldn't necessarily go back and do a student position, but you could do something else at Columbia. So it's really important to talk to your hiring supervisor, let them know that you've graduated now so they can let you know what type of positions you'd be eligible to do. Okay. So we are now back to John. All right. So he is the one who is going to be looking at your application. We don't want to see you get lost in the sea of all the applications he is going to be processing. Just remember that you are one of many. But with everything that we have shared with you today, we hope that you feel empowered, that you know that you have some tools now. We know how much this work authorization means to you. And we do want to see you succeed and have a smooth process in getting that EAD card. So just know that this is only the beginning. After you get that card, you'll want to continue to use our website to stay informed about your obligations under your OPT time. As I said, there are some reporting requirements. Everything can be done online, but you do want to make sure that you report every job that you have. If you change jobs, you change your address or anything, all that can be reported on our webpage. So again, here's what you can control, right? Apply early. If we haven't said it enough, hope you all know, apply early. Choose a start date, okay? And stick with that. And make sure that you reference the ISSO webpage along the way to make sure you know what you need to be aware of. So now you have the power to make this process easy. We hope you now that have a plan of action. After listening to all our tips, you can, think through this again for yourself and see, okay, now that I know these tips, I am now going to make this plan of action. So strategize, see what works for you, and then, submit your application to our office. So we thank you so much for your time. Here you can see our contact information again. Feel free to reach out to us. And that is the end of that section. And now we will start with the questions.